All right, so uh, Ralph Nader, who has been somebody whom I've respected from his failed bid, which I attribute to his failure to uh, to become the president of the United States. I attribute that to the media, the DNC, the RNC, the DCCC, and think tanks funded by the oligarchs, such as the Koch brothers, Robert Mercer, the Sheldon Adelsons, and the DeVosses, and basically just about every rapacious criminal, uh, wealthy, which you can include Bezos. You can also include what's his name from Microsoft, Bill Gates. You can include that fucking criminal moron from Facebook. The And you can include the old criminal families of the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the Rothschilds, and so old and new money all working in conjunction with the political class, the managerial class, the bankers, hedge fund and vulture funds, and all those. Basically, they're just rapacious criminal con artists who should be in jail, if not put under a guillotine. Uh, Trump, the Trump family, same thing. They all act like mafia, and it is not a conspiracy because if you actually get down to the nuts and bolts of it, the actions they have taken, and with the co-conspirators, such as the mayors of New York, in Trump's case, the mayors and council and people that are supposed to be these elected officials on local and state councils, and judges and DAs and police chiefs and police captains uh, and uh, and the state congress, and uh, those are factual truths that you can actually find, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to find out about it. Uh, there has been an avalanche of in-depth looking investigations into the Trump family and others who have done what the Trump family has done. Uh, that's out there, and if you can't even if you don't want to take the time, then go to the Gray Zone. Uh, Check out Red Lines from Gray Zone. Max Blumenthal, uh, Greg Palast. Uh, uh, and there are dozens upon dozens of others that you can look at, and it's something that, with the with I wouldn't trust Google all that much to get you there, but you have other choices like Brave, DuckDuckGo, and other browsers that who are who have a more uh, who are not co-opted, and so you have a lot of choices out there, and you can find this. Now, I'm not saying that Brave and DuckDuckGo don't have their flaws, but as far as finding what you're looking for, they are far better than Google or Yahoo or AOL, which is still a thing. So, you know, and YouTube, you can find this stuff on YouTube because Ralph Nader's Radio Hour puts us out, and I encourage people to subscribe and pay close attention to Ralph Nader Radio Hour. One thing they don't say is that you'll hear from even a lot of the so-called lefty sphere. They don't ask for money or donations. They do ask that you subscribe and then you pay attention and so on and so forth, but they're not pandering for money. And so and so that's one of the things that I like. And so and Ralph has done a lot. And the radio station that has Ralph Nader Radio Hour, they I truly respect them, and the fact that they haven't been shut down, I'm kind of surprised at, but because the stuff that they put out is, you know, if you're a thinking and conscientious person who understands the screwing that you're getting, that we're all getting, and they, you know, Ralph Nader and the crew that, you know, they would probably be shut down, and Ralph took a huge beating, both socially, politically, and just about every way, and he's somebody I truly respect, and I think we should all be invested in finding out what's actually taking place, because there's a lot of stuff that I talk about that Ralph Nader and Ralph Nader Radio Hour confirms, and it's by people who have taken the initiative to actually look really, really critically at things, and done the investigative legwork. And these people are the true heroes. They are the true patriots. They are the ones who are looking out for the common good. And so it's integral that we pay attention. And the reason I'm talking about this is because Ralph Nader Radio Hour put out something called the tax industrial complex. That was a day ago from what that's what YouTube is saying, and so they're talking about a lot of the stuff that I'm constantly talking about, and it just goes to show that the words I use and the way I formulate things isn't coming out of some derangement or some conspiracy theory, because this is all stuff and I've talked about this before. You know, one of the things that I left a couple of comments on that particular video, which I just finished watching, Oh, it's not a video. It's just it's all, mostly voice. It's all voice actually. There's no video. But the thing is that you know, like one of the comments I left is that how the formation and this idea of counties, there's Westchester County and there's Norfolk County and all these. That's just a way. It's an enabler for felony criminal corruption done on the local and state levels to basically give them an excuse to say, "Oh no, our we're not getting enough tax revenue. We're not getting enough this. We're not getting enough that." And so that's why we need these counties. And then what they do is they end up putting in rules, statutes, regulations, and all these other stuff. And all it does is it bleeds the people in the community. And oftentimes these are hyper focused the on the poor, on the marginalized, on the minorities, on natives, the native indigenous. It's hyper focused to make sure that mom and pop operations, you know, have great difficulties. It's focused on bleeding the collective taxes to go to more affluent communities, because those affluent communities are the ones that keep these criminals, these rapacious criminals who are supposed to be the local government and the state governments, and as well as the federal governments, to have a base that sees this illusion of rosiness and fantasy, so that they're the base that keeps these criminal con artists in power, and they work in concert to de-incentivize and disqualify and basically keep the poorer, more working class that has to work constantly and have to work for paycheck to paycheck and have to do the bootstrapping. And that's not just minorities, because there's a lot of the so-called white majority who keeps getting larger and larger and larger into to being the desperately poor, or heading towards the marginalization and all those other stuff. So this particular Ralph Nader Radio Hour, called the Tax Industrial Complex, explains how this is happening. And so if you listen to this, you will understand what I've understood for quite a long time. I talked about how subsidies for like the early days, there was a lot of subsidies that was talked about by the by the by the media, of how we had this professional sports teams, they're getting subsidized left and right, but but that was something that they put out, but they never put out how Walmart got massive subsidies. They didn't tell you how other international and national monopolistic criminal chains were getting more and more. Uh, you know, they, uh, you know, and more we started seeing it. And like I lived in Massachusetts, and Bradley's, which was a medium sized uh, retail operation, as well as what was it? It was Bradley's and some others, and how they were basically decimated and put to pasture because of this rapacious criminality, and and Walmart ended up taking a lot of Bradley's and God, I can't think of the other one. This was a New England, medium-sized New England based company, and these are the ones that were playing more by the they were playing by the rules and not taking criminal action. You know, or didn't have the finances, the money to be able to do the criminal actions that gave Walmart all the advantages, that gave Kohl's and and Kohl's and all these other big ones that didn't give you know chain restaurants, the big national chain restaurants, and all these, they didn't get the advantages because they didn't aggressively do so, and the reason for that is probably because those people understood, the ones that understood that it was not competitive, that it that it was not moral or ethical or principled or anything like that. They knew how criminal it was. They understood that it was a criminal felony, that it basically boiled down to bribery, and thereby committing criminal felony, bribery and extortion and all those, and they didn't overly do it. Now, had they done that, they probably could have been like Stop and Shop, which actually owns Giant. Stop and Shop is a New England, Massachusetts, New England based uh, 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 supermarket chain. There's also Star Market, which couldn't compete in the criminal marathon of what's or Shaw's. Shaw's, there's still some Shaw's, but basically Stop and Shop did that criminal marathon of doing. CVS is another example. CVS and Stop and Shop is a rapacious, predatory, criminal organization, and so and then you have the other ones coming out from the Midwest and the West. Then you have the ones in the South who are doing the same thing, and so all these, you know, Walgreens is another example, but they're not playing, but they're not doing a great job of even using all the things, because it's a matter of how much money you're willing to pay out, and what sort of risk you're willing to take. And you know, and a lot of people know about Toys R Us and how hedge funds and vulture funds and all these like these big the big players like Blackstone and others have basically they are they are corporate raiders, which is another word for criminal destruction using actual criminal tactics that operate much like how the organized crime or mafia does it. All the ones, including Bezos of Amazon, Bill Gates of Microsoft. I mean, think about it. You buy any computer, and you're basically forced to have the Microsoft software. You buy from Apple, same thing. You can't choose, and Microsoft you have to pay for stuff, and a lot of times like, they were like Word used to be free, preloaded. Now you have to pay for that. Now you have to pay for this. And Apple does the same thing. I mean, think about it. The Android systems that you use, like the smartphone I'm using right now, it comes preloaded with Amazon, and you can't get rid of Amazon. You can't get rid of Amazon. But it's not just even Amazon. There's Facebook. You can't get rid of it. You can't delete it. You can't get it out of your system. All of this. This is criminality. There is no freedom. There is no competition. It's a monopoly. And all monopolies are a criminal mafia organization. It's a criminal operation. And there are laws. There are laws that are on the books which have never been taken away, but somehow it doesn't apply. And it's obvious. I think a lot of us are starting to see how blatantly obvious it is. And even some of these new organizations that have popped up, like Indivisible, actually, Ralph actually said, Indivisible contacted him and saying, yeah, we do do this stuff and so on and so forth, but they refused to talk to Ralph when Ralph tried to contact him, and that's another problem, is that you have all these organizations that have popped up, and Indivisible, basically sent a complaint to Ralph about something Ralph said, like, there's really nobody actually looking into this. He made a generalized term, but it actually applies, because a lot of these organizations are like those think tanks like ALEC and the one it's like the one that's connected with Democrats. God, I can't think of it. But they're there, and they make it sound like they're going. But it's like, if that's the case, then why aren't we seeing the gravitas that's needed to go after it and stop it? And put out, hey, it's a lie, it's a con, it's a crime, it's a felony criminal crime, and Bernie Sanders, AOC, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, uh, uh, what's his name from the governor of New York, uh, and the mayor of New York, and the governor of Massachusetts, and the mayor of Boston. Boston. Why aren't we Dianne Feinstein? Why aren't we hearing about that? Why aren't we hearing about the how the RNC and the DNC and the DCCC and all these other and ALEC, why aren't we seeing actual constant talking about this, constant updating about the level of criminality associated? Why aren't we hearing about how MSNBC and CNN and Fox, Breitbart and the Federalist and the Daily Caller, the Daily Wire, the Daily Mail, if it says Daily something, guess what? It's a Rupert Murdoch, Fox connection to it. Why aren't we hearing about the criminal culpability of all these, and those on the left, like TYT or Democracy Now? Democracy Now, the whole time during the Hong Kong protests, they were doing stories about how China is doing this and China is doing that. Except you could actually see from the story that Democracy Now! Was doing that there were actually American flags and the connections with the American funded groups and Western funded groups were inciting insurrection in Hong Kong. That whole story about the extradition, that was a whole load of crap. They don't tell you about how that so-called student activist that they promoted and how he's connected. This is the sort of crap I'm talking about. It's all interconnected. Jimmy Dore had a guest on, Lee Fong of the Black Agenda Report, and Lee Fong, who actually who's actually gone to Hong Kong and gone into China, who has actually looked at it critically. And then there's also Nathan Rich, who actually lives in China. And so all this stuff, even Democracy Now! Doesn't. Why? Well, you could come up with all sorts of reasons. One being that they very well probably are getting orders to prioritize and misrepresent and misdirect and all that other stuff. TYT does the same thing. Now, TYT and Democracy Now! I wouldn't put them on the at the level of CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, or ABC, or New York Times, or Washington Post. Nowhere near. But they're still doing Western propaganda. They still are doing the cheerleading. this manufacturing consent. And unfortunately, a lot of the people on the left that do shows, like David Dole, Carl Kalinske, and many others, they don't they don't they get a lot of the stuff from the mainstream, or from the so-called real left news channels like the Guardian, and other more so-called reputable left media. And it's like they get it and they just regurgitate it. They just regurgitate it. And the thing is like Michael Brooks is a prime example. Michael Brooks regurgitates. He's more on the left, and I don't think he actually is doing propaganda because he's being told to do it. But Michael Brooks, whenever he's talking about China, he keeps on saying authoritarian and dictator. Talking about Xi Jinping and the Communist Party. Even though he's had guests like Pepe Escobar, who's telling him, no, you're wrong. It's not the case. And Li Fong is another one that's actually, and Pepe Escobar actually has gone over there and looked at it. So, Michael Brooks keeps bringing up the Xinjiang province and the Uyghurs, and the thing is Nathan Rich actually debunks it completely. Li Fong, the same thing, and Pepe Escobar actually even said the same thing. A guest that Michael Brooks has had on several times, and he actually says he has a lot of respect for, yet he keeps doing the propaganda rhetoric. It's like it's not sinking in. You could accuse me of doing it, but that was before I knew about it. I changed. When I was corrected on my ignorance, I changed it. Are there problems with the Chinese government and their representative leadership? Of course, but that's with any. But are they being overt? Are they being overt? Are they being staunchly unwilling to take criticism and look into it and make changes? No. The whole Belt and Road one, where they were giving out loans to other countries, and yet they were sending in a lot of they were sending in all domestic Chinese people over there to do the manufacturing and all other work. But that was something that was leveled, and the Chinese government took it and started to say, okay, and Pepe Escobar, Li Fong, Nathan Rich, and some others have actually come out and said, oh yeah, they saw that criticism, they saw that it was legitimate, and they're making efforts to change that. So it's like but that's not what even much of the left of the Western left is willing to even deal with, even though they may have heard it. Like as I said again, Michael Brooks. I like Michael. I think he does some good work, But I also think he's intractable in certain ways and unwilling to adjust. Now, check out the tax industrial complex from Ralph Nader Radio Hour, and this isn't just Ralph. There's others, and by the way, you'll also get a feed to a website that you can check out on detailed reporting about this, about the tax industrial complex. So understand, if we cannot overlook this fake patriotism, this idea that we are such exceptional people, and cannot admit to the gross, aggressive aspect that is physically harming, that is economically harming, mentally harming, health-wise harming. Not just in the domestic front, but on an international and global scale. Then, what sort of a patriot are you? If you can't even come to terms and understand how horribly, evilly, aggressively, rapaciously, and high criminal actions are being taken, because Bernie Sanders, he's been in the political sphere for 40 years, but he cannot understand and will not understand, especially with his endorsement of the CARES Act and others on other things that have been taking place, even though he's talked about it before, about the bailout of the big corporations and banks. If you cannot not understand that, and is not willing to understand that, and come to terms that it is criminal, then how patriotic is he? How invested is he in the actual well-being of the common good? It wipes out everything that he stands for, everything that his 40 years. Because if you've been in politics for 40 years and you know, then you cannot in any way, shape, or form say that you are a populist for the common good. You are just as bad as Mitch McConnell, just as bad as Pelosi, just as bad as Biden and Schumer. You're just as bad as those on Fox. You're just as bad as those on CNN and MSNBC. You're just as bad as the Kochs and the Mercers and Bezos and Gates. You're just as bad. You do not get a pass. And the thing is we have to come to understand, we cannot give them a pass. We cannot give them a benefit of the doubt, because that idea of giving benefit of the doubt only encourages and enables them to continue to do so. And if we are not willing to come to common consensus, common logical and principled and ethical or moral consensus, and understanding that we collectively are being hosed to the point that it is causing actual death, actual economic bankruptcy on a personal national level, then we don't actually have a we the people. We have a we, the minority criminal mafia organization of organized crime, and we have but peasantry that must abide by the orders and dictates and authority. Authority which is used to criminalize and vilify and destabilize and divide that is the real violence. We have to come to understand this, and we must take a stand. There's not much more I can say about this. Anyways, check out Ralph Nader Radio Hour and the tax industrial complex, because there's a lot of information on that one show, and it's vitally important that we come to understand, and that needs to be shared. Interestingly enough, I couldn't seem to. I noticed something about this when I checked it out. I couldn't put it on a watch list or into the categories I put it in that I would normally put it under. And, you know, I'm going to see if I can share this, but I ran into some difficulty. Maybe there's a glitch, or more than likely I'm being, I don't know. Anyways, do me a favor, check that out, and understand that if you want liberty, if you want justice, if you want freedom, then we can no longer sit on our asses, and we must take forceful action, and we must understand that when we use our words, we must use words which are completely and utterly valid, and we must determine what it is. Felony criminal action. Thank you.